Hello, I'm Robert Moynihan in Rome, Italy on July 2nd, Wednesday, 2025. Happy to speak with Father Charles Murr in Spain. Good afternoon, Father Murr.
And Father Charles Murr in Spain is always delighted to speak with you, Robert.
All right, well, you're lucky to speak with me today because I nearly had a stroke in the midday sun here in Rome.
What happened to you?
Just walking across St. Peter's Square amid the crowds with a briefcase and a bag strap over my shoulder. And I was also wearing a jacket because I was going to the press office for a press conference. And it was so hot, I felt I might drop right there.
Oh, I know.
It was beating down.
Do you know that, Robert? The first time I worked in the Vatican for 5 years, right? I was there for one summer, and we went outside to the square, and this was the first time I had seen it. We looked down the Via della Conciliazione, and there were stripes down for traffic. They were going back and forth in the heat, back and forth. I'd never seen such a thing. It looked like a snake, just from the heat coming off the road. It was unbelievable. And you just, I think it was like 103 degrees that day or something. Unbelievable.
Well, I think
yes, Rome gets very hot, and it gets hot because it's not a concrete jungle; it's a marble jungle. Yeah. It's got you've got everything like that. It gets hot very.
Yeah, I think it's 198 in the shade and about 105 in the sun.
Good Lord.
We've got some wonderful things to talk about. We have some people. Oh, Michael P. Has just given a gift, $4.99, and he appreciates both of us. Father Murr, we're in the big time now. God bless you both.
Hey, there's no stopping us now. There's no stopping us now. Thank you, Michael.
So, very, very, very much appreciated. And yeah, I mean, there are people fighting it out with billions of dollars, and they're impressive people, but their access to money is kind of astonishing. Billions to them are like pennies.
And you know
to
what's
us.
Even more astonishing, Robert? All equally astonishing is that God doesn't want to be on that side.
Yeah,
He wants to be on the side of the widow and the widow's mite. That's the side he wants to be on.
Oh, thanks, Father Murr. All right. Father Murr, we had a very interesting article appear today on Diane Montagna's Substack. Diane is writing for her own Substack. She also writes for Aletheia website. She writes for the National Catholic Register. She's collaborated on a couple of books with Bishop Schneider of Astana, Kazakhstan. And the main book was Christus Vincit, which is a story of his life and his thinking, that she worked for 2 years with him on that book. So she's made a study of the whole question of the old liturgy, the new liturgy, and Traditionis Custodes, which reversed in 2021, really the feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, July 16th. In 2021, Pope Francis put new restrictions on the celebration of the old traditional Mass in the Roman Rite, in the Roman Catholic Church, and reversing what Pope Benedict XVI had done after years of thinking about it. He had promoted in Summorum Pontificum the free celebration by any Catholic priest of the revered and appreciated old liturgy. This thing has become a terrific battle in the church because so many people appreciate the old liturgy. They find it's more reverent. And they bring their children to the old liturgy, and there's dozens and dozens and hundreds of children. But the Vatican has made the argument that this is divisive in the church. And there's been a request made that every bishop will have the right, the priests must ask their bishop before they can celebrate the old liturgy. Now, when Pope Francis made this decision to restrict it, he based himself on a survey that had been done of the bishops around the world. And what Diane has been doing for several years is trying to get a hold, through talking with Vatican officials who have actually seen the survey, to get a hold of the actual content. And what she's just published is something I thought I might go through with you today, just for the record. How does that strike you?
It strikes me.
Okay. Here's the exclusive report that she's given. Do you see that clearly?
I see it clearly, yes.
Exclusive official Vatican report. This is the report Francis asked for that was done prior to 2021, so more than 4 years ago, exposes major cracks in the foundation of Traditionis Custodes. That's of tradition, the guardians, of tradition in the genitive, Traditionis Custodes, the guardians. A lot of people have felt that that was somehow an ironic title for a document that restricts aspects of the tradition. You know, do you have a comment on that title of the document, Father Murr?
Well, you can certainly see the point, can't you? You can certainly see our point, because I'm one of those people. I thought, what a ridiculous title. It's almost insulting.
Yeah.
The title. Yeah, anyway, yes, for the reasons you just explained.
Yeah, in a sense, the restrictor or even the rejecter of the tradition, rather than the guardians of the tradition.
Yes.
So she goes on to say, previously undisclosed documents, because we've never seen these documents. They've never been published. The documents which were part of the survey, which are the survey results that led the Pope to write this in 2021, have never been made public, but she's been given access to some of them. You know how that works here in Rome.
And could I remind our listeners that this is the new and improved Vatican under Pope Francis. This is the transparent Vatican. We're going to make things clear. We're going to be honest. We're going to be open. You couldn't get this document. You couldn't get a copy of the document to even see it. Just as we, Robert, you and I, still cannot get the Cardinal Gagnon's documentation. Yeah. It's really a shame. It's really a shame. But I've got something to say on that a little bit later. Go ahead, please.
So previously undisclosed documents now being discussed here raise serious questions about the stated rationale for Pope Francis' 2021 decree restricting the traditional Latin Mass by Diane Montagna, the great American Catholic journalist. July 1st, that's yesterday, 2025. Here's a picture of a celebration of the Latin Mass. Traditional Latin Mass is celebrated in the tomb of St. Catherine of Siena at the Basilica of Santa Maria sopra Minerva, right next to the Pantheon in Rome on September 15th, 2017. Photo by Edward Penton. Edward and Diane are collaborators and friends, and they work together and they make a tremendous team. And this Vatican City,
what are
July
they saying?
2025, new evidence has come to light that exposes major cracks in the foundation of Traditionis Custodes, Pope Francis' 2021 decree that restricted the traditional Roman liturgy. This journalist, that's Diane, has obtained the Vatican's overall assessment of the consultation of bishops that was said to have prompted Pope Francis to revoke Summorum Pontificum Benedict's Benedict XVI, 2007 apostolic letter. You can always remember that, July 7th, 2007, which means seventh day, seventh month of the seventh year of the millennium. July 7th, 2007. Apostolic letter liberalizing the Vetus Ordo, the old order, more commonly known as the traditional Latin Mass and sacraments. So this is the summary text. It's the overall assessment. The previously undisclosed text, somehow someone showed this to Diane, which forms a crucial part of the official report by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith on its 2020. Remember, that was the COVID year, and that was a letter sent to the bishops around the world from Rome asking them to comment on how Summorum Pontificum was doing. How was the implementation of the free access to the old liturgy doing around the Catholic Church? Were bishops appreciative or were they concerned? And there was a survey. This summary reveals that, quote, the majority of bishops who responded to the questionnaire stated that making legislative changes to Summorum Pontificum would cause more harm than good, close quote. This overall assessment directly contradicts, therefore, the stated rationale for imposing Traditionis Custodes and raises serious questions about its credibility. When, on July 16, 2021, Pope Francis promulgated Traditionis Custodes, and I should note, Father Murr, that in the 2 weeks prior to July 16th, Pope Francis was in the hospital. Okay?
All right. But may I ask, was the prefect or the congregation, was the prefect for the Congregation of Doctrine of the Faith in the hospital?
No.
He was alive and well, wasn't he?
Right. And
Yes, okay.
the man in charge of the liturgy congregation is an Englishman, and he's a powerful personality. His name is Arthur Roach, Cardinal Roach.
Yes.
Have you heard of him?
Yes. Yes, he's very anti Latin Mass. Very anti-Latin Mass. Yes. He knows which side of the bread his butter is on. Yes.
Okay. What we're saying though is, what I'm saying is, conceivably the people around Francis were working even as he himself was not really in the best physical shape. He was actually in a hospital bed just before this was published. In any case, yes. When he promulgated it, he said the responses, explaining what this document was, he in a letter that was published along with the document, he said the responses to the questionnaire, quote, reveal a situation that preoccupies and saddens me and persuades me of the need to intervene, close quotes.
And that was Pope Francis who said that. Is that correct?
Yeah. But what Diane is trying to say?
Pope Francis said that he became sad and preoccupied, worried, concerned. He himself, when he got the result back from the survey. Is that right?
Exactly. Yes. And
good.
We can presume that he's finding in the survey motivation to feel that having celebration of the old Mass is causing divisions and tensions in parishes and dioceses, which the bishops are uneasy about, and asking Rome to do something to lessen them. But what? Yes,
we can assume that, but we wouldn't be right to assume it, because
exactly,
that's not exactly what he's saying, is it?
Right, and because the questionnaire doesn't really support that, and therefore either Francis himself read it and came to the wrong conclusion, or Francis was told what the survey concluded and took that at face value. You see the two possibilities?
I do.
Yeah.
Have you got time for just a little bit of a story? When I was working in the Vatican in 1975, it was Holy Year. That was 50 years ago. I can't believe that. I'm talking about 50 years ago.
75 to
1975.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so people came from all over the world, and in particular, some people came to Rome who were in need of a place to stay, and they came to the information office, and we were trying to find places for them. They were from Czechoslovakia. They were from East Germany. I didn't know how they got out. I don't know how they got out, why they got the permission, but here they were. And I was speaking to a woman.
You have to specify that they couldn't easily in those years because the Iron Curtain
it was impossible. It was virtually impossible. Nonetheless, I was asking this woman, what was it like to live under Hitler? She was of that age and everything. I've got a first person conversation with somebody who lived under Adolf Hitler. And she seemed to be still pro-Hitler. Now this is years after the Second World War, and how evil, how wrong we know that Hitler was. And she said this, and I'll never forget it because I've heard it from other people when I went to Germany also. She said to me, he wasn't all that bad. If he had just known, if somebody could have gotten to him to tell him the horrendous things that were being done in his name, but they didn't. I said, holy Toledo, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. Was she still ready to excuse him? This is what it sounds like to me. This is what it sounds like. No, I'm certainly not comparing Pope Francis to Adolf Hitler. Please, that's not what I'm doing. What I am saying is people are ready to excuse their leaders because they like the leader, they like the direction he's leading, whatever. But they're ready to blame everyone around him. And this is the same thing. Had Francis only known, Robert, had he only known what was going on. Well, of course he knew what was going on. He was the one who asked for the survey.
Yeah. Well, I am still going to push back on this because there's a second or additional way of looking at this, and that is we all, or at least I am looking in a sense to try to cover in some way for an act which, if it's necessary to make a radical revision for our present Pope Leo the 14th to say we're going to reverse Traditionis Custodes, I'm trying to provide for him an argument that it wouldn't be simply a reversal and almost a slap against Pope Francis. I'm trying to just give that little bit of fig leaf that we could say he didn't realize that he was being led by a group of very modernist and progressive bishops to take a decision that wasn't supported by the evidence. And therefore, now we can reverse that decision without directly attributing a severe and unseemly decision making to the previous.
So in other words, we wouldn't have to say that Francis was wrong. Is that right?
Well, I'm just
still have Francis right. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm just saying I want to protect the Father that the entire institution depends on, Pope upon Pope, so that even as they zigzag sometimes between certain excesses, either with regard to prudential decisions or even moral matters, some of the Renaissance popes, that we nevertheless can retain a certain institutional unity with regard to our leadership.
Well, that's good. If that's the way you want to think, you can think that way, right?
All right. Okay, well, we'll continue to read this. And let's just say that if you've got a spot here in the past where we have a decision taken that seems to not be based on the evidence that was brought forward to explain the decision, we could consider that the evidence was presented to the man who made that decision in a distorted way. But anyway, but you rightly brought up the example of someone else who just was so desperate to not accept the mistake or the evil of a decider, which is the other side of the coin here. And,
I'll never forget her words, Robert. They were, "If only someone could have gotten to the Fuhrer to tell him."
Yeah.
And I thought, you poor, pathetic woman. Anyway, go ahead.
Regrettably, Pope Francis said in an accompanying letter explaining this document, Traditionis Custodes, of Tradition the Guardians, in the letter to the world's bishops, quote, "The pastoral objective of my predecessors has often been seriously disregarded. An opportunity offered by St. John Paul II, and with even greater magnanimity by Benedict XVI, was exploited to widen the gaps, reinforce the divergences, and encourage disagreements that injure the Church, block her path, and expose her to the peril of division." Any comment on those words?
I'll give my comment at the end. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, but anyway, so he's giving essentially the line that it wasn't something about the intrinsic beauty and holiness and dignity of the liturgy itself that was moving St. John Paul to allow the use of the liturgy in the Ecclesia Dei Commission, where your friend Father Marini was working for many years.
Marini was very, very much involved with this. He was very much involved with getting that all up and running, and a very good friend of Ratzinger, and pushed for it to be done with Ratzinger. He didn't live long enough to see it done, but that's what he was pushing for. Now, let me just say this about that. It doesn't matter whether John Paul II or Ratzinger, even for that matter, saw the intrinsic beauty involved in this. That's not the question. The question is, are there clergy, cardinals, bishops, priests, laity that see the beauty in this? That's all. And yes, they admitted that there were. All right, so therefore they're representing these people. Whether they themselves see it or not is not the question. Ratzinger, probably the most intelligent man we've had in the pontificate, as Pope since Pius XII, Ratzinger saw the beauty, and he wrote beautifully about the beauty in the spirit of the liturgy. I would suggest that every Catholic read that book. It is magnificent. Then you will understand where Ratzinger was coming from when he gave this sweeping permission to all priests to be able to rediscover the ancient Vetus Ordo, because it's beautiful, beautiful. And yes, he did believe in its beauty.
Yes.
But my point is, Robert, that's not the point. Whether the Pope saw the beauty or didn't see the beauty, that's not the Pope, because he's legislating. He's giving permission for those who did see it. Now, in this case, Ratzinger did see it. He shared that with everybody, right?
Yeah.
But I just want to make a distinction there.
Yeah. I was going to just continue to read this, but now I'm going to leap in here and say once again, this issue is the kind of nodal issue. It's where the rubber meets the road here. It's the whole question of the entire effort made to modernize and bring up to date the Roman Catholic Church in the 1960s at the Second Vatican Council, with the accompanying mythology that a new springtime was coming to the Church. And therefore, the change in the liturgy was the hinge point of this. And Joseph Ratzinger was participating in the council and after the council. The liturgy was changed. It's been celebrated by 95% of all Catholic priests ever since. But there remained a strong feeling among many people alive at that time, and is now reemerging again today, that there was a great beauty, a great reverence, a great sacrality, holiness, that the new version of the liturgy didn't protect and convey to the same degree, and has led to the emergence of a traditional movement, which is some way condemning the superficiality of the spirituality of the post-concilia period. And the question becomes, are those who are trying to hem in the old liturgy actually trying to close the door on what Joseph Ratzinger called the hermeneutic of continuity, and actually defining what happened as a break, but meaning by that all of our prior Catholic tradition was in some way defective because it was primitive somehow, not modern enough. And there are many of the progressives who actually, in their heart of hearts, believe that. And therefore, this is the critical battle, the central battle, as to whether our church and our tradition have gone forward successfully through time, always remaining faithful. Semper idem was the Episcopal motto of Cardinal Taviani, by the way, always the same, that we would protect and preserve the doctrine of the faith unchanged through the vicissitudes of time, or whether the church must inevitably cast away, in a sense, the incrustations of prior centuries to emerge in a kind of new Catholic Church, no longer connected with those kind of embarrassing traditions. And how we go about this process is still being determined in 2025, right today, in this type of article that Diane Montagna has written. And we have to have the courage to look at the entire matter. But I'll go forward now.
That's an interesting take on it. I disagree with that for one reason. Most of what you said I can go along with, but here's what was missing. They asked G.K. Chesterton one time, they said, now that you're getting older, you seem to be more conservative. And his answer was, I haven't changed my point of view at all on anything. The center has moved. Right? The center has moved. It's not that people have discovered, or out of a sense of nostalgia, that they found the beauty of the old mass and were entranced by it and everything. Do you know why the majority of people, modern people who have gone to that, young families, young people have gone to the traditional mass? Not because they remember it with nostalgia, because they weren't even born. They are sick and tired of the nonsense of the new, because it knows no limits to its foolishness, with balloon masses, clown masses, LBG, LMNOP masses, people turning upside down, sideways and doing cartwheel masses, motorcycle masses. No, people are saying that's enough. That is enough.
Okay.
And this is not ending. It's never ending, Robert. You know that. It's not ending. You'll find somebody crazy, some priest tomorrow who will get it even worse in another situation. This is what people want. They want stability.
Yes, and what you've just said could be perhaps a little clip we'll take out of this, because you just summarized it. I'm not opposed to what you just said. I just said this battle, it's a pivotal battle, and it requires observing all the necessary procedures of evidence in order to come up with what the way forward can truly be, and to win this battle. Because I was with a priest just 2 nights ago, coming out of a prayer service in St. Peter's Basilica in the evening, and one of the priests who I actually had seen the very morning, because on the last Thursday of every month, So this is Wednesday. So this was 6 days ago now. But no, Saturday. Sorry, the last Saturday of each month, a mass is celebrated at the tomb of Pope Benedict XVI at 7 in the morning. And there were only 25 people there, Father Murr. And I was perhaps the 25th. But it was a beautiful mass, and I have a certain respect and affection for Pope Benedict XVI, and a priest who was the co-celebrant with Father Lombardi, who was a Jesuit.
I remember Father Lombardi, yes. Yes.
Yeah. And he's now the head, he's in retirement, but he's still the head of the Ratzinger Pope Benedict Foundation here in Rome.
Yes.
To keep
happened?
The priest said, I'm from Apulia in Italy, but I'm working in Belgium. And he said, it's gone. It's gone. And he said, in fact, all of Northern Europe is almost gone. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, the liturgy, but the faith, a kind of a secular thought, a kind of rational thought, a kind of thought, sort of mechanical, pragmatic, materialistic thought just dominates in every way.
Yes.
Well, that's
so in other words, what you're saying is the new liturgy to the modern Catholic in those countries didn't do it for them, did it?
Well, I'm precisely saying that under the principle of lex orandi, lex credendi. Lex is law.
Exactly.
The law of praying is the law of believing. That means the way that you pray becomes the way you believe. And if you pray sort of mockingly or casually or haphazardly or in a clown-like way, you end up believing that the universe is somehow clown-like. So if you have a kind of respect, reverence, then you start to revere also your fellow man. And you somehow have a kind of Catholic ethos, which the liturgy, the way of praying, has inculcated in you from your youth. And this is what people are longing for and are finding. And this is why this battle is not just about the liturgy, it's about the faith itself. Because the way of doing the liturgy, the way of praying, becomes the way of believing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So,
but let's go on that, because you brought it up. You brought up this point, and you talked to this man who said that in Northern Europe, particularly, what he's saying was the faith is gone. Not just the liturgy is gone; everything is gone.
Well, you know, these bishops' conferences are demanding changes in Catholics' teaching, and they're saying we can't continue to believe as the African bishops believe on some of these matters. We have to change.
Well, that'll help. Well, that'll help, right? If we just believe more what the world believes, that'll take care of everything, right? If we just grab the lack of virtues, the lack of everything that the world has, that'll take care of the Catholic faith. That's I can't believe that kind of thought. But our bishops, we do have bishops who think this way. Yes, you're right. You're right. They're there. That's why they're failing. That's why they're failing. The church is either going to conquer the world, or the world is going to conquer the church. It's very simple. It's very simple. And the world up to now has conquered the church. We have let in the world, and we have espoused the values of the world, and they are wrong. They are incorrect. No wonder nobody wants to come to. Why would they come to us for an answer? They're already living it 24 hours a day.
Yeah, I would say the idea that where we go to is a space or a place or a way of being that is filled finally with profound joy, not with misery, is the principle. Is the principle that we follow. And we know that we could be tempted with a kind of superficial or false seduction, whether it might be, I don't know, drugs or some other thing. And we know that leads to misery. So the church isn't a group of people who are simply trying to make everyone else miserable. Au contraire, we are the last defenders of the true good of man. And the rest of society, in a kind of demonic farce, has presented to people all sorts of miseries and led them to embrace them and to be seduced by them and to be addicted to them and to end up in kind of a slavery. And the fact that the church isn't standing strongly enough to propose the path of beatitude, of blessedness, which is what you propose, what Chesterton proposed, what Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict proposed, is the great issue of our time.
Well, you may call it an issue of the time, but it's really not coming. It's coming down to something very simple. It's not going to be an issue. There's not going to be anything else standing. If the faith is lost in Northern Europe, and if it's being lost in Europe, and if it's being lost all over the world, there's something that has to be done. There's something that has to be done. Now, when something is being done, and now listen, look how beautiful, something at the grassroots level was being done. This liturgical movement with new people, young people, families, started growing on its own. It was incredible, devout, and that's closed down. We must stop that. Why? Why must we stop that? Are you kidding me? I saw a movement of charismatics, which I considered Protestants, come into the Catholic Church and get a breath of air and move forward, and they're all of a sudden a great movement. Nobody stopped that. Why would this be stopped?
Well,
why would this be stopped?
You and I both would answer it's being stopped because the strength and truth and beauty of the church is making some people in powerful places very uneasy, and they feel
absolutely.
They feel
Yes,
beholden.
we agree on that.
To this globalist group that really wants what do they call it, transhuman society of Promethean man, unrestrained by any moral constraint. And therefore, the church is the catechon, and Benedict himself once spoke about that stands against the final appearance of that which is seductive evil and finally enslaving humanity, which is the Antichrist, the against the Christ, over against the shepherd savior who frees man. So, yeah, this battle, and Diane Montagna is a fantastic journalist, cultivating her contacts.
I look very much forward to the day when I can meet her. I've read a lot of her stuff. She sounds like an absolute dynamite of a person, a great person. Yeah. I look forward to meeting her one day.
Yeah, she's when I was some months in America during COVID time, when she was here in Rome, she actually stayed in the same apartment where I'm in now. She rented it, sublet it from me. So the Pope told the bishops that he was constrained by their request to revoke not only Summorum Pontificum, but, quote, all the norms, instructions, permissions, and customs that preceded his new decree. And then continues, however, what the Vatican's overall assessment reveals is that the gaps, divergencies, and disagreements stem more from a level of nescience, prejudice, and resistance, she says, of a minority of bishops to Summorum Pontificum than from any problems originating from adherence to the traditional Roman liturgy. Okay?
She is absolutely correct. She's absolutely correct. Yep.
Conversely, the official Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, CDF, report states that, quote, the majority of bishops who responded to the questionnaire and who have generously and intelligently implemented Summorum Pontificum ultimately express satisfaction with it, close quotes. That's why I'm so interested in this, and I think it's critical. This is a critical piece in the mosaic. You can't get around this fact. The bishops, when questioned, expressed satisfaction with it according to the official CDF report. That was the summary.
Yes.
It adds that
that's
quote.
That is why it was never made public. The results were not made public.
So everyone listening, this is giving you an insight into activity at the top level of the Vatican and how things happen. And he goes on to say, this official CDF report, the summary of what the survey found, says, in places where the clergy have closely cooperated with the bishop, the situation has become completely pacified. Close quote. No disharmony, no tension. Catholics who are appreciated. In fact, I think he's going to go on to say that these people who attend the old liturgy were regarded as the most valued members of some dioceses because they were charitable, they were kind, their families provided a kind of large number of people in the diocese, in the parishes, who could hold up the faith of all time. And so the overall assessment, which can be viewed at the end of this article, and this is from Diane Montagna Substack, in the original Italian and in an English translation, so she's published it, also confirms the contention that she reported back 4 years ago, because she was on this story all along. In October 2021, that was a couple months after the document came out, that Traditionis Custodes magnified and projected as a major problem what was merely ancillary in the official CDF report. Boom. Okay. Furthermore, the text clearly shows that Traditionis Custodes, of tradition the guardians, disregarded and withheld what the report said about the peace Summorum Pontificum had restored, and turned a blind eye to a, quote, constant observation made by the bishops, close quote, that younger people were being drawn into the Catholic Church through this older form of the liturgy. The overall assessment predicted, based on the responses of bishops, what would ensue were Summorum Pontificum suppressed, forecasts that turned out to be accurate. So then she goes and takes apart this official report, and we have about 10 minutes to go. I can go through this so that we complete this. Father Murr, what would you like to do?
You call the shots.
Okay. If there's something that you see that leaps out at you, I'll try to quickly run through this. I do think it's important to get the whole story. The task of preparing this official report was entrusted to the fourth section of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. Until Traditionis Custodes, this entity, formerly known as the Pontifical Ecclesia Dei Commission, that's the commission that your dear friend Marini, Monsignor Marini, worked on until his death. Yeah. And I too met him there in those offices, and I'd forgotten that when I met you and you talked about Marini, and then that he was a member. I remembered how I was struck by his sobriety, by the strength of his mind.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I do. And you know, there's something to remember. He was not a traditionalist, Marini. He was a believing Catholic, but he was not necessarily a traditionalist, not for the old liturgy. But he believed that Catholics had a right to what was their inheritance. Whether he was part of it or not didn't matter to him. Catholics had this right, and he was going to protect it. You remember, they'll say so silly. It's a silly saying that they'll say, you'll hear the liberals say it in politics, what would that? I would die to defend your right to free speech, right? Well, they wouldn't die. You know that. Marini would. Marini would have. He wanted this. This was an inheritance, a Catholic inheritance that he wanted passed on to generations if they wanted it, and he worked for that. Yep.
And it was responsible, his group, and there were 5 or 10 priests that worked in that commission. And Arthur Calkins was a Marian scholar who was a wonderful man who worked there, and also the secretary of Cardinal Pell worked there for a while. Father Withus, an Australian, was Okay, so this commission was responsible for supervising the observance and application of the provisions established in Summorum Pontificum. And of course, all of this was in part related to the emergence back in 1988 of the schism of Archbishop Lefebvre, when he ordained 4 bishops and said, we're going to continue celebrating the old Mass, and we're not going to go along with some interpretations in a modernistic direction of some teachings of Vatican II. We are still working through issues that emerged in Vatican II and go back really to the modernism of the first decades of the last century and even the last decades of the 1800s with Loisy and the other modernists of that time. Consequently, the 4th section, this group that looked at this, the Ecclesia Dei Commission, possessed a breadth of experience and expertise with which to view and analyze the survey results. In the spring of 2020, again, that's the COVID spring, a questionnaire was sent by then CDF Prefect Cardinal Luis Ladari, a Jesuit, to the presidents of Episcopal conferences worldwide. And by all would agree this man was an honest man and a man who meant well, tried to do his job in the best way possible under Pope Francis. For distribution to diocesan bishops, responses were received by the CDF until January 2021, so about 8 months collecting these surveys of how the celebration of the Latin Mass is doing in the various dioceses. What are the good and bad results? The body of material submitted in several languages was processed, analyzed, and incorporated by this Ecclesia Dei Commission, the 4th section. While I have not seen the report in its entirety, I am reliably informed that the 224-page final report dated February 2021, and the Traditionis document comes out in July 2021, is comprised of 2 main parts. The first part offers a detailed analysis of the survey results and findings, continent by continent and country by country, and includes charts and graphs illustrating data and trends. The second part, titled Summary, Synthesis, is briefer and includes an introduction, a summary on each continent, an overall assessment, Judizio Complessivo, of the survey results, and a collection of quotations drawn from the responses received from the dioceses and arranged thematically. This collection was meant to provide Pope Francis with a representative sampling of the bishop's responses. The overall assessment opens by noting, because she's read the whole thing now, so she's summarizing it here, opens by noting that Summorum Pontificum played a significant, albeit relatively modest, role in the life of the Church. By 2021, quote, it had spread to around 20% of the Latin dioceses worldwide, and its implementation was, quote, more serene and peaceful, though not everywhere. I do think there's all sorts of questions that could be raised even about these phrases here, but Pope Francis stated in Traditionis Custodes, July 2021, that he, quote, considered the wishes expressed by the episcopate and heard the opinion of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. Again, he's trying to say he wrote that based on what he was told. This overall assessment is precisely the part of the report that synthesizes and interprets the survey results offering an evaluative conclusion drawn from the evidence. In other words, this synthesis reflects the informed judgment or opinion of the congregation for the doctrine of the faith. And so, Pope Francis not only had the report, but according to reliable sources, literally snatched a working copy out of Cardinal Ladaria's hands during an audience, telling him he wanted it immediately because he was curious about it. And there's your view that Francis was very interested in getting to know what the survey was saying. Although the Vatican has never released the contents of the official report, in October 2021, I obtained and published the collection of quotations included in Part 2, indicating, however, only the country or region from where the quotation originated. This collection may be viewed in full at the end of this article. Again, this is dianemontagna.substack.com. So there were 7 key takeaways that the overall assessment, which is the new document that she's had access to, come up with. 1.
I don't think we're going to have time for the 7 for those 7 last points. I think we got them in the body of what you were reporting on. We've only got 2 minutes left, Robert.
Okay, these are just specific examples of the main point, that the bishops themselves did not say there needed to be a change or an abolition of Benedict's permission to celebrate the Old Mass. And Francis said that the survey was so worrisome in this regard that it compelled him to overturn the freedom granted in Summorum Pontificum. And she's saying, Diane Montagna is saying, this is a contradiction, a serious contradiction of the evidence that she presents here, that they did not find a situation of great tension, of great divisiveness, of a need to stop the celebration of the old Latin Mass. Some other misinterpretation crept in, or else a deliberate decision to not listen to the obvious sense of the overall results of this survey.
Well, I'm very happy because this brings me to a very happy conclusion. If Francis wasn't aware of the survey that the result of the survey that he himself issued, he wasn't aware of it. He depended on other people to read it to him or to figure it out for him or to report it to him. And they reported incorrectly. Well, Pope Leo should send out pink slips real soon to all those people. You should get rid of them immediately because they're scoundrels. They're scoundrels who are dishonest. And now, if he sees that the result is contrary to what he had thought before, he should immediately change the prohibition on the Latin liturgy and on the sacraments and put it back to what it was, the Summorum Pontificum. He should. That would be the honest thing to do, because this is an obvious there was something wrong here. It was mishandled. Let's say these people were honest. Let's say they were, and they made honest mistakes. I don't believe them for 1 minute. I believe they were dishonest and they made dishonest mistakes. But let's say they were honest and they made honest mistakes. Fine. Now you can rectify them. Now you can change them. Now you have the information to go back and change it. And if Pope Leo, for example, does not do that, knowing that these were false reports, they were false claims, and came to a conclusion that has caused so much pain and anguish to so many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in the Catholic Church throughout the world, if he does not change these things, it simply means that he also was of the opinion of Papa Bergoglio. That's very simple. I mean, that's logic, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there's much more that we can say about this, and we will continue with our coming conversations. You've sketched in stark colors right there the choice that Pope Leo XIV is now going to face. Diane Montagna has published The Smoking Gun evidence that something was wrong in the document Traditionis Custodes and then the explanation for that document. It doesn't fit with the evidence.
Well, Robert, we actually knew, you and I actually knew that there was something wrong before this, because both of us, I think I remember correctly, you also, but I certainly have spoken to bishops who never were asked. They were never even questioned. So, I mean, what do you mean the result is this? They were never asked. They wrote nothing. So the whole thing is fishy right from the beginning, and it shows an ideology. It shows we're going to make this work. It's sort of like I remember the good sisters, Lithuanian nuns, who taught us if they didn't do anything else, they instilled the fear of communism in us. I'll tell you that from their homeland. But they were trying to explain Russian elections, and there were free elections. You could vote yes or no for the candidate. I mean, come on. So this is what we're it seems like we're playing these games, and actually what the world is asking of the Vatican is that the Vatican be true to what the Vatican itself had claimed. It's been claiming for decades now. We want openness. We want transparency. We want clarity. We want honesty. Good. How about giving us some honesty? And then honestly following the conclusions. I think this is a great opportunity for Pope Leo to show really his concern for the faith and for all of the Catholics in the world, not just a segment.
Okay, that's a good point to end our conversation. We do have some spots on our pilgrimage to visit you in October, Father Murr, where people could join us in southern Spain, see Seville, the great capital and of Andalusia, and talk with you for several days, work through some of these questions. That'll be in October 2025. We also have other pilgrimages, and we're making some severe reductions because we have a group of people coming and we want to add 5 or 10 more. And so we're going to try to give a special discount. Let's call it the July 4th discount. If you call in this week, this weekend or early next week or this next couple of days to our offices in America, people will get give some special discounts to you for some of the pilgrimages that we'll be doing later this year. So
good.
I don't like to do any advertising, but I do appreciate
I know
everyone.
you don't.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, just
I just wanted to say, I just wanted to say, we all appreciate everybody's help with these programs, with everything that's going on, because people are showing their commitment to our faith. One way or another, they're showing their commitment to our faith, to their faith, to the faith. And it's wonderful. Now, my friend, I've got to say goodbye until next week because I've got somebody else waiting for me. Okay?
Okay.
But I've got to tell you, I'm very encouraged by this. I'm very encouraged by this because I'm sure that Pope Leo will do the honest thing, and that'll be fantastic. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah, we're gonna see some very interesting things in coming months, Father Murr.
God willing. From your lips to God's ears, Robert. God bless.
Amen. God bless you, Father.
Come with us on a unique pilgrimage and retreat to renew your spirit. Experience the beauty and richness of southern Spain. Our retreat master, Father Charles T. Murr, a renowned Catholic priest, best-selling author, philosopher, theologian, trained psychologist, and pastor of souls. Father Murr will guide us through 3 mornings of spiritual reflections at a convent located in the historic heart of Carmona, Spain, promising a transformative journey. Experience an intimate evening with Father Murr at his home. Wine, dinner, music, and conversation, a highlight of this unique experience. Explore picturesque towns in Andalusia, each with its own history and charm. From the ancient streets of Carmona to the majestic beauty of Cordoba, the breathtaking views of Ronda, the remarkable village of Centenil, and the historic wonders of Seville. Our pilgrimage will be filled with awe-inspiring moments. Join us on this profound spiritual journey and rediscover the joy of faith, fellowship, and renewal. Book your place now and embark on a pilgrimage and retreat unlike any other.